All right, so hi everybody. Starting up with who am I? So let's begin. All right, so who am I? I'm managing an incident response group at Perception Point. So a few words about Perception Point. We are an Israeli startup that is doing email security, URL security, and detection of malicious file uploads. And I'm running a team that operates 24/7 along with the product. And we're experts at creating detection engines against phishing. And this is what we are going to talk and discuss about today. So starting up with introduction. In the last 3-4 years after COVID, we are seeing more and more people switching to hybrid works, right? We're working from home. And in fact, email had become one of our main channels for communication. And this is a very concerning situation for organizations that try to protect their end users. Because if we are looking down at the numbers, in the last year, 91% of all cybersecurity attacks actually started with an email, whether it was a phishing, malware delivery, or business email compromise, where hackers are actually impersonating a coworker or a vendor and asking you to transfer funds or change the bank accounts. So looking down at the history, phishing has been with us for over 30 years now, where attackers first impersonated AOL employees and fished for credit card. In the past, when you wanted to create a phishing campaign, you had two options. The first one was to create a phishing template on your own and then deliver it to all of the audience that you want. Or go over to the darknet and purchase a phishing kit. But right now, we are living in the 2020s, and we are living in the Gen AI ages, where you can simply go into a Gen AI tool and generate a phishing template within 20 to 30 seconds and just inject the malicious URL or the malicious file inside of it. So what's the agenda for today? We are going to touch 4 main points. All right, phishing trends and evasion techniques used by attackers over the past year, post-account takeover tactics, what is going to happen after a hacker actually compromising a mailbox, why does phishing still work these days even though we have so many security filters out there, and an anti-phishing approach. All right, so a disclaimer, all the examples that you are about to see and I'm about to expose you to are real and concrete examples that were investigated by my team, and these are trends that are running on right now as we speak. Starting up with text obfuscation. So you all know these kind of phishing templates, right? They're just telling you your password is expired and click here to keep my password. But for the human eye, it actually looks like a normal text, right? But if we copy and paste it to the command line, we can see suspicious spaces between the different letters. And if we are going to break down the Unicode, we can see how the hackers are actually managing to manipulate us. And the K letter is actually a Latin letter, followed by a Cyrillic E letter, and then followed by 2 no-break spaces that the HTML doesn't even render them. So if we are continuing to look at all over the different characters over here, we can see how a 4-letter word actually transformed to be an 8-letter word, and it's managing to bypass the static text filtering. So if you are using an outdated email security solution, you're not going to catch this type of attacks because this word is not keep, and the password is not a password. And it's an easy bypass for attackers that understand that outdated security solutions can't detect these attacks. All right, so moving on to a novel attack that we have seen over the past year, browser in the browser. All right, I don't know if you heard about this, but this one made so much noise over LinkedIn and Twitter. And what attackers are doing, they're actually using HTML and CSS code to design the browser to look like it's opening another window within your own browser. So the original domain is going to be fake, but the URL injected inside of it looks like it's really the original Netflix.com. So you can see the first one is actually impersonating Netflix login, and the other one inside of it is pay.netflix.com. And what's unique about this, we can really move the window around. It looks like a browser within the browser. We can resize the window, and for the end users are not really trained about cybersecurity, right? So they're always looking for whether the HTTP or the HTTPS and the website is secure or not. So looking down at the website, we can see it looks like the website is actually secured, and once you're giving away all the credentials and the credit card, the hackers just get them, right? So another point over here, it's managing to evade the favicon detection, all right? what security filters are doing, they're looking at the favicon of the website. And if there is a mismatch between the favicon and the domain, they're just going to incriminate it as an impersonation attempt to Netflix. But in this case, we don't have any favicon. And you have to have a solution that is equipped with visual detections in order to fight against this type of attack. So similar to that, Google introduced this year 8 new TLDs, and .zip was one of them. So what we are seeing is also archive in the browser using HTML and CSS trick to make the end users think that they open WinRAR or WinZip inside their own browser. So the uniqueness of this one is actually abusing the .zip domain, but it's also managing to bypass the crawlers, because this one, once you're clicking on invoice.pdf, you're actually downloading an invoice.exe, an information stealer, to your laptop. And once clicked, all the information is going to be sent over to the hackers, right? But security solutions are limited with resources, and we can't click on every one of the URL and every button when we are browsing into a URL, right? So we are looking into words like download, click here to view, and things like this. So in this example, there is no download button, there is no click here button, and the security filters are just going to browse into the website and mark it as clean because they didn't click any button and the file was not downloaded and they couldn't incriminate everything. So 2 things over here. First one, you are giving it a clean verdict. Second thing, the end user really thinks that he opened the file inside WinRAR, and maybe third point, you're also giving a good reputation right now to this domain because it managed to bypass your system. All right, moving on to QR phishing, or with its new term, quishing. We are seeing 800% increase in 2023, and when you're seeing such increase in the numbers, it means that it's really working for the hackers. So once you are scanning the QR code, you're actually going to be redirected to a fake Microsoft login, and it's moving the threats to the mobile. And when we are on the mobile, we are not protected over there, right? You're just scanning the QR code and you are using your personal device. It's not related to your work environment. And the website looks much more legitimate on the mobile phones because we can't really see the URL, we can't investigate the source code, the HTML, the JavaScript, and where the response are being sent to. So this one raises a question. If we are seeing such an increase in the numbers, this is actually working for the hackers, and end users are actually scanning these QR codes, right? So next time you're running any phishing simulation, make sure you are trying these examples because end users are just not familiar with these ones. All right, moving on to some piece of code. So hackers are using CAPTCHAs, geofencing, and redirects in order to mislead the security filters into thinking that the URL is legitimate and redirect you to a different place. So we are seeing user agent block list, IP block list, VPNs, and user interaction heuristics. And what hackers are doing, they try to find a way into identifying that the system is now browsing into the URL and then manage to block it. So in this example, we can see a piece of code that is actually using the navigator.webdriver flag at Chrome. And while this flag returns true, we have 3 options. Or you're using an automation tool, remote debugging port, or headless browsing, which are immediately connected to security filters because when you are browsing in a headless browsing mode, it's much more quicker for the security solution to get all the HTML and CSS code. All right, so you're always, when you're thinking about security solution, it's all about resources in the end of the day. And they are using these options in order to find the code of the website. So I mentioned about the IP block list and host block list. So this is a code that actually targeted Latin America a month ago. We can see that the hackers are actually doing IP block lists with ranges of subnets, host block list, and if we break down the list, we can see all of the big security companies out there. Barracuda, FireEye, Proofpoint, Mimecast, everybody. And another interesting point is that they are managing to block hosts like CIA.gov and FBI.gov. And that way, the security researchers are not able to reach the final payload and take down the C2 servers. And the final goal of this block list is actually to redirect you into a blank page. So as a security filter, when you're getting a blank page and a white page, you're going to mark it as clean, and then you are going to give it a clean reputation. So this is also an easy bypass for hackers right now because they know how to identify whether you are a system or not. All right, following with that, we are seeing two-step phishing attacks. And the reason it is called a two-step phishing attack is that the end user has to make an extra step. All right, he's receiving an email that tells him your password has expired, click here to reset the password. Then he's going to receive and be redirected to a legitimate hosting service, which can be a website builder, web node services, file sharing services that you are using every day. And what hackers are doing, they are embedding an href inside of this legitimate website that will redirect you to another place. So let's look down at the video. We can see that right now we are inside of Dropbox Paper, a legitimate application that many of you might be working with every day, right? And there is a button inside of it that once we are clicking on it, we will be redirected to the fake login page. As you can see, we are being redirected to the fake Microsoft login. And what's interesting about these two-step phishing attacks, they are actually abusing over 400 services that you are working with every day, such as Salesforce, SharePoint, Adobe, even public Jira tickets that your product managers are working with, and they can open a bug to the developer and tell him, click here to be redirected to the bug. And then the developer gets to a fake Microsoft login and he thinks, all right, this is a legitimate behavior because I just want to see the bug. So make sure your end users actually understand that while working with these applications, they are not clicking on links that redirect them to a different domain. And it doesn't stop there. We are also seeing abuse of Microsoft and Google services. And this is what we like to call the allow listing vulnerability. Because many security analysts and security engineers that are actually sitting here right now, they are adding it to the allow list. And hackers are abusing services like OneDrive.com, customervoice.microsoft.com, and even SharePoint. And we are also seeing it with Google for Google Docs and Google Sites. But what really caught our attention this year is actually the abusal of Google Translate domains. And when you're using a Google Translate domain, you're getting the Google Translate reputation, right? So hackers right now hosting login pages over Google Translate domain. And what's interesting about this, you can see that this one is actually impersonating perception point login. And at the end of the URL, there is going to be a parameter injected that is going to be the recipient address. So the website knows how to take the domain and design the website to look like it's actually perception point website. But what's interesting about this one, you can easily change the language and send it to a different audience. So let's say we want to target a Greek audience or everything changed, even the web title. So let's take this example and just change the domain into Microsoft.com, all right? And let's see what happens. In 2 seconds, I just created a whole new phishing campaign. And let's say I want to target the employees of Microsoft that are located in India. Bam, we have it, all right? You can see how you can easily manipulate the end users and the abusal of Google Translate. So how are you going to notice it? You have to look for logins that are hosted on Google Translate because this is a very suspicious behavior. And Google Translate domains that actually end with the recipient address in the URL path are really suspicious. And if you are a security analyst that investigates phishing URLs, look for these signs. All right. Encoded HTML files, we're also seeing 200% increase in the usage of malicious HTML files. And what's interesting about this one, hackers actually understand that if they are sending you a malicious URL and you manage to incriminate it, once you incriminate it, it gets a bad reputation. But if we are moving to talk about files, files don't have reputation. You can rehash the file and send it over and over again, right? So it will be harder for you to incriminate it. But if you are also looking down at the code of this one, so these are 3 pieces of code that actually came from the same file and 3 steps that we had to take into reaching the final malicious payload. So we can see the attackers actually started with document.write A to B with a base 64 code. After decoding it, we reached AES encryption and we managed to decrypt the file. And then we got to an X payload, and we can also see that the attackers are using a set timeout function. So using all of these kind of obfuscation techniques, they are managing to bypass the static code filtering, but they also understand that, again, security solutions are limited with resources. And once you open an HTML file or URL, you are probably going to browse in for like 5 to 7 seconds. So if they will manage to do the set timeout for 10 seconds, they're also managing to bypass the dynamic scanning. So this is really interesting. and what you should be looking out for is encoded HTML files, encrypted HTML files, or any kind of obfuscation within the JavaScript code. Phone scams. I guess that many of you are already familiar with these trends, but what hackers are doing, they are spreading out fake renewals alerts. And this is not a generic credit card phishing. All right, once you call these numbers that appears into the invoice, you're reaching call centers that are located in India. We actually called over 50 numbers, and we reach every time a different representative. And hackers are actually managing to create over 1,000 templates every month. And you can see the examples over here. They are usually impersonating services like McAfee, Norton, PayPal, services that you work with them every day. But the final goal of these phone scams is actually to try and get control over the endpoint. So let's say you work in the finance department, right? And you work with invoices every day. So you're probably going to get the invoice and say, all right, this is not an authorized invoice. I'm going to give them a call. Okay, so let's say you receive these invoices from a fake Gmail account. You're going to say, all right, this is fake. Somebody is trying to scam me. But what's going to happen when you're receiving these invoices from services that we work with every day, such as PayPal.com, Intuit, QuickBooks, and everything, and they just inject the phone number inside of it? You're going to make the call. And this is all about trust, because there is no malicious URL, there is no malicious file, and you are actually making the first contact. So this is very interesting, and this is why end users are actually falling for it. So what they like to do, they like to impersonate Geek Squad that is a service offered by Best Buy. This is our customer service, right? So let's look down at Best Buy real website. It looks like this, and this is the original Geek Squad URL, right? What the attackers did, they create a lookalike domain, geeksquadworld.com, and we can see already here the fake phone number and the fake domain. We call them, we were instructed to go over to the support tab and download from their team viewer. We gave them the code, they accessed our laptops, and what they did, they went to a URL and downloaded additional payload to our laptops once ran. All right, this was an information stealer. So this is a new way of delivering malware to the laptops without any email, because you're making the first contact, and it's all about trust again. So if any of you know the YouTuber Mark Rober, he's a very cool guy. He's actually calling them and takes them down. So I suggest you all follow him. I really like his videos. Moving on to social media posts. We're also seeing the abusal of LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. So on the left side, we can see an email that looks like it actually came from support@facebook.com, but this one is a spoofing attempt, and the SPF check didn't pass. But inside of this one, we're seeing a legitimate facebook.com URL that is redirecting you to a group named DMCA form inside of Facebook. So once entered, it alerts you that you violated the account, and you have 48 hours to fill in a form, or your account will be shut down. So we can see another URL inside of here that will redirect you to a web application that really looks like Facebook, right? It's got the Facebook design, it's got the Facebook favicon, and when you click on a URL inside Facebook and you remain with the same design, you really think that you are inside of Facebook because you're an end user and you don't have the awareness for malicious URL and things like this. So once filled every detail inside of this form, of course, you can just fill in demo and everything and just send it over. The application is going to load a nice little GIF impersonating Meta, and is going to answer to ask you to enter the password. And the reason hackers are actually now trying to steal the password for a social media post is password reuse. All right, hackers understand that right now each one of us is working with over 50 different web applications. We are probably entering the same password for our bank accounts, for our Facebook accounts, and for the work environment. So once I get my hands on your LinkedIn account, I can get my hands on your work environment. So I showed many examples of things that we're dealing with them every day, such as the evasion technique, all right, such as the any kind of new trends in phishing, like the QR code. And the next thing I want to talk about is what is happening in account takeover. So follow the 10 steps that are going to appear on the left side, along with the number that are going to appear on the right side. So first, hacker is generating a phishing email, right? He can do it with ChatGPT, for example. He can build his own tool or just purchase over darknet. Then the phishing is sent to the victim's mailbox. The victim opens the phishing email and is actually clicking on the URL and enters the credential into the fake login window. Next, the hacker gets the credential, and right now he has access to the victim's mailbox. The next step is actually going to be defining new malicious inbox rules, which we are going to talk about in the next slide. And then we are going to use the victim's mailbox in order to deliver malicious payload to known contacts. It can be phishing, malware, or any kind of business email compromised attacks. And this is what I like to call a recursive phishing, because when you get the known contacts infected, you are just going into a recursive phishing and to a never-ending loop, right? Because the hacker will manage to expand his database again and again, and just not going to stop. And we are seeing like 500% increase over the past year for compromised mailboxes that are being used in order to send massive phishing campaigns. So let's get back to step number 7, defining the inbox rules and suspicious indicators that you have to be looking out for when you're investigating an account takeover. So first, we have the suspicious login. What IP was the users logged in from, which country, and things like this. You can get everything from the defender logs. But if you're looking down at the inbox rules, we have two options. Inbox rules that have suspicious indicators inside of it, or forwarding rules that are forwarding all emails outside of the organization. So indicators to look out for are rule names, delete and move actions, and suspicious text filtering in attributes like subject or body contains word and from address contains words. And the reasons hackers are actually doing it, if we're looking at the bottom right example over here, as an hacker, I accessed your mailbox, right? And I'm going to use it into delivering a massive phishing or massive malware campaign. So I don't want the victim to know that right now I'm inside of his mailbox, so I'm going to define the rule that says every subject or body that contains the words hack, phish, spam, compromised, out of office, basically automated messages that can come from servers, that can come from people that tells you, listen, your account got hacked, I'm going to move it into a different folder, or I'm just going to delete it, and that way the victim won't know that I'm inside of his mailbox and then can keep using it into leveraging my campaign into sending another campaign. All right, so the evasion techniques, they don't stop with the phishing. They also continue once the hacker gets his hands on inside of the victim's mailbox. So why does phishing still work these days, even though we have so many security filters out there? I like to divide it into 3 main categories. We have system-wise categories, detection-wise, and organization-wise. So system-wise categories are actually the reasons that I can identify the fact that you are a system and I can manage to block you, whether it's by your user agent, your headless browsing, your IP, and sometimes when you're using a system, let's say you're using an email security solutions, developers sometimes enter bugs into the production environment, and this really can hurt the detection capabilities. All right, detection-wise, let's say you are already using an email security solution, but it's outdated. It doesn't have any QR capabilities, OCR capabilities, or any other of visual detection capabilities. So you're probably going to need to switch this email security solution into a new solution that is equipped against all of these type of evasion techniques. And the last one is going to be the organization-wise. All right, so this is more configuration and internal threats, like weak password policies, not configuring SPF, MFA, and again, internal threats. So how are we going to deal with it? So we are seeing a new approach in the market right now for in-browser security. In the past, we were talking about enterprise browsers and isolated browsers, but right now we are seeing new products for web extensions. That extension have amazing detection capabilities. And the first thing is going to be 100% dynamic scanning. When you're inside of the browser and you're following each one of the actions taken by the end users, you're going to reach the final payload because the end user will have to reach the phishing page, the web vulnerabilities, or any kind of other of malware being downloaded to his laptop, right? So when you are moving the detections only from email to the web browser, you are able to detect the malicious behavior over there. Another point is non-email threats. As I mentioned before, we are working with many applications over our work environment. And I guess all of you are using WhatsApp over your laptop, YouTube, it can be malvertising over YouTube, and your Facebook account. So phishing these days they don't have to come via email, right? You're using their SMS, your WhatsApp, your Discord account, your Telegram account. So these browsers, these extensions, they know how to identify these threats because they are scanning everything within their own users' browsing. The next point is going to be account takeover investigations. So when you're inside of the work environment's browsers, you're able to map all the services used by the end users. And you are able to map to see all the logins and where the credentials were entered. So let's say you have a compromised users, you can see all the credentials that were entered in the last 7 days and find where the compromise of the account really came from. So this also leads me to password reuse, where we talked about. As if you have such security solutions, they are able to tell you whether the same password was used over and over again. And let's say you see that the end user is using the same password of the work environment into his Facebook account, you are able to lock the account immediately and tell him to reset the password, or just alert the admin and see what's the awareness of end users inside the organization. So moving on to enforcing policies. Let's say you're not allowing your end users to reach out to any Dropbox account and download files from there. You're able to define any policy that you want that will be applied on the web browser. And it also leads us to the internal threats, all right? Data leak prevention. You are able to know what screenshots users are taking if they are trying to download messy files from your SharePoint or from your OneDrive, and then you are able to block it. You can blur the screen, you are able to block their downloads, and you can immediately disable the web browser for the specific user until you finish your investigation to understand what's going on and why the end user is actually using such things. So some key takeaways I want you all to take out from here and when you are back to the office next week. All right? The first thing is going to be set a strong password policy. Make sure you change the password once in a while. You have enough characters and special characters. The second thing is going to force two-factor authentication. And unfortunately, we are seeing so many clients that they don't do it. And once I get my hands on your SSO service, I can access everything. It's not just your work environment, it's other services that you are using, all right? And the third point is going to be configuring an SPF records against spoofing attempts. So I'm not sure that you're all familiar with the term SPF, but SPF is Sender Policy Framework. And in basic words, it just checks the email and it checks the correlation between the domain that the email was sent to and the IP address. So let's say I'm using perceptionpoint.io. I have a public SPF record that defines which IP addresses are allowed to send behalf of perception point name. And if there is a mismatch and the hackers are actually trying to spoof perception point, I can incriminate it as an impersonation attempt. So make sure you are configuring your SPF in the right way. So the first three are really, really important. But moving on to the next thing. Conduct phishing trainings to end users at least 2 times a year. Every few months, there are new employees in the company, right? And if we're talking about big enterprises, every new day there is a new employee in the company. So make sure you are raising your end users' awareness. The next point is going to be running simulation with trendy phishing evasions. Just running a simulation that tells you, hi, I'm an admin, and please reset your password, is just not enough these days because we have seen all the archive in the browser, we have seen the QR code, and all of the encoded HTML files, so make sure you choose the right simulation service. And in order to map your weakness, please run an annual penetration testing and find the weak spots, because when you're hiring a red team, you're able to map all the weaknesses inside of the organization that you're probably not testing while you're using just a simulation service. Monitor suspicious inbox activity, both logins and both rules. And if your stock team doesn't know how to do so, make sure you're getting a product that can really indicate suspicious behavior and alert you for such attempts. Deploy an advanced email security solution equipped with the latest techniques against all of these kind of evasion techniques. And embrace new and emerging innovative technologies such as the web extension that we talked about. And if you are getting the same products from the same company, these products know how to communicate with each other, and they're becoming like a big harmony, right? So once you have, let's say, an account takeover, you can check all the emails that came through the system and then combine it with the logins and the URL that was actually taking out one of the emails and say, all right, my users got compromised because he entered this credential into this URL in this hour, and the URL came for this specific email. So with that being said, I think we have some more time, but I want to thank you all for listening, and if any of you wants to reach out over LinkedIn, just scan the QR code if you still trust QR code after what we have seen. Make sure to follow us over Twitter. We're posting some new attack trends. So thank you all for listening.